Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're joining us this episode, and we've got Ian Davis here. Ian is the owner of Blip Coffee down in the West Side area, right?
Yeah, down in the West
Bottoms.
Yep.
And it's great to have you here. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Been trying to connect for a while.
So,
yeah, let's start by just hearing where you're from, where you grew up, kind of your family background, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So my whole family's from Florida, myself included, but I've lived in Kansas City since I was 3. So my brother still lives in the area, but my sister and parents have kind of moved back to the East Coast.
Okay. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Rockhurst High School.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Wasn't a great time, but went to Casey Mo Public Schools, charter schools, magnet schools, through grade school. Went to Rockhurst High School, went to UMKC. Didn't graduate, but put in my 4.5 years.
What were you? What kind of classes were you taking in college?
I was actually a French major with an English minor, and
serious
completed all the coursework for both of them. And I hadn't met with a counselor, I think, the entire time, right? Like, I didn't know anything. Nobody reached out to me. And finally, one of my French professors, I'm taking like grad classes and stuff, and they're like, hey, like, shouldn't you apply for graduation? I was like, oh, let me go do that. So I go apply for graduation. They're like, yeah, no, dog. That's a no for me, dog. You're missing like all these undergraduate courses for math or for, whatever else it was. And they're like, yeah, you got another, I don't know, 1.5 years of basics in order to graduate. And I was like, I'm good. I finished the work.
What drew you to French?
I actually grew up speaking French. So I started out in a magnet school in Sugar Creek. It's kind of like Independence, Missouri, called Sugar Creek Elementary. And so starting in kindergarten, it's a French-only immersion. So it was pretty cool, and I kind of followed that track throughout grade school. So bounced around quite a bit, but went to Sugar Creek Elementary, Longin Elementary, which is kind of over by the Costco in Midtown. Went to goodness, where else did we go? I guess for French, I also went to Academy Lafayette. Went there for a couple years.
Wow.
Kind of rounding out grade school. But
are your parents? Are your parents French, or are they?
They're not. I'm not actually sure what the inspiration was, but we lived in Independence, so the options for grade schools, that kind of seemed like a good one. Did
you do French in Rockhurst a lot too?
They had it as an option,
Yeah.
but I think I took a semester of it or something like that. But the French immersion that I grew up with was very different than super different from anything at Rockhurst. Still very different at the university level, but when most people think of a French classroom, they might think of a teacher from Paris or a teacher from France. And I've actually, I don't know that I've ever had a teacher from Europe. Maybe one or two, but really most of my teachers over the years have been from Africa. So I've had teachers from, Cameroon, Mauritania, Seychelles Islands.
Very interesting.
So a really interesting and diverse, schooling through the beginning stages of my education. And
that's interesting.
High school was just kind of like the opposite of that, what you grew to know. So
that's interesting. I've got a lot of degrees, but so like when I was in college, you had to have, I was a Bachelor of Arts guy at Baylor, and so you had to have 2 years of a language. And because I'd taken a couple of years of French in high school, I decided that I'd do French because I could get out of like the whole first year French at college, and I jumped right into third and fourth semester French in college. And I really, 2 years in high school didn't prepare me for that.
Sure.
So like I actually had my the first semester I took French at college, which was a third semester French class. Half the class was in French and half was in English. So I kind of hung in there and got a C. But then the fourth semester, it was with this lady who was from Paris.
Okay.
And the whole class was French.
Yeah.
Like she didn't speak any English. So it's the only D I have on my whole transcript. Like I'd have to sit next to my friend in the back and like, what'd she say?
Just follow along in the book,
terrible.
Smile and nod.
What's funny, then I got back, I was actually working on a PhD in the Hebrew Bible, and you had to either have German or French, like theological German or French. So then I ended up revisiting theological French, which was, so French has been kind of a little teeny bit of my life. But have you ever been to France or anything?
I haven't. I've been to Canada, so I've been to Montreal, but that's been the extent of my travels.
Can you converse pretty well?
Yeah, I don't often, but conversing was always what came so easy. So understanding, what kind of came secondary to me was the writing, and so that was very interesting because in an educational program, most kids who are learning French are really learning the conjugations. They're really learning how to write well. Whereas mine was almost the opposite, where I grew up speaking, interacting, learning all sorts of, we learned math and science and history in French. So when I got to college, it was clear I was, not as far along as everybody else was in their writing skills.
Yeah. Interesting. What'd you do after college?
Let's see. So after college, was working in coffee in Kansas City. Worked at a little shop called Oak Street Coffee Shop at 63rd and Oak.
Okay.
I guess that was kind of through college a little bit. Bounced around a little bit, worked a few different odd jobs. Moved out of Kansas City. I moved to Charleston, South Carolina for about a year. And was doing coffee down there, and moved back to Kansas City and started Blip in 2014.
Okay.
So,
yeah, 8 years.
Yeah.
Nice. Blip Coffee. So, before we jump into the coffee world, so did you go to Rockhurst? Was your family Catholic in background? Did you have?
Yeah, they were Catholic, and my mom was actually a teacher there. So, my parents did lots of interesting things, but maybe the most interesting was that they really positioned themselves to give us free education. So, like my dad taught at a private school to get my sister free access, and then similarly my mom taught at Rockhurst to get my brother and I access to that too.
Yeah. So were they pretty committed Catholics? Was that a
absolutely.
Was that a positive or a negative in your world?
Oh man, I mean, this is where you might cut me off.
No.
I think that there can really be a lot of positives to religion. I think that the idea of the sense of community, can be a basic one. Offering an agreed upon set of ideals, or for a community, I think that can be good. And maybe this is like the goofiest answer you ever got on here, but follow me on the tangent.
It probably won't be.
Yeah, I mean, I also see, a lot of hurt. I also see like that it also causes a lot of issues. You know, I'm my partner Madison and I have been together for, I think, going into our 5th year, and she has a daughter, Pearl, who, you know, we first met, I think, when she was 3, and she's turning 7. So, you know, kind of learning how to be a dad, learning how to, you know, help kids, have a family, you know, kind of coming into it not knowing everything, right? And if there's one thing that I've learned, and Pearl's like super rambunctious, super smart, you know, like a really fun, smart kid, you know, is figuring out what she needs from me. You know, like she's going to figure it out. She's going to know how to learn and get good grades, and you know, we read and do math, and you know, we do all these things. But that was kind of the question I was faced with. You know, I was like, what does this kid need from me? And you know, the only thing that she wants is support and love. Yeah. And to know that I'm going to show up for her no matter what. You know, and if I can communicate that to her, that's all she needs. You know, that's the support she needs. That's the you know, there's not much else that I can offer that you know, and I don't know if she would say it in as many words, but I think she would kind of come around to that too. And so with religion, you know, does it help do that? You know, and sometimes I think it can, you know, but you know, especially when we're talking about Catholicism, or you know, you could probably offer a lot of different examples of ways that religion really gets in the way, that might not allow me to love this kid, or to let this kid know that I love them unconditionally. You know, like, whatever you do, I'm going to show up. Like, whatever happens, I'm going to be there for you. Whatever mistake you make, whatever decision that you made at that time, doesn't matter. I'm pulling up. So, like, you know, I was, you know, just talking with different family members, and, you know, chatting, and, you know, like, depending on your views about things, you know, like, what if, you know, like, what if your kid is gay? How do you handle that as a parent, as a, let's say if you're a Christian? Does your religion get in the way of the love that you should be showing your kid? You know, like, what's that interaction going to be like? You know, if your kid is, you know, fill in the blank, you know, I think that's probably like the most clear example, right? Sure. But I think that's my take on it, is I think that there can be some benefits, but more often than not, I think that you really see it move families apart. You know, I mean, you really see, especially like an older generation to a newer generation, you know, the realization that, you know, maybe this generation of adults has a cap on their ability to love me, right? Because of the way they were raised, because of the institution that they've bought into. You know, here I am out of wedlock with this baby and this girl living in Wyandotte County. You know, like, is that, you know, is that this like really bad thing? I mean, is this like, you know, you're as maybe my parents, or, you know, other folks their age might look at that and say, oh, you know, we can't support this. You know, we can't, you know, I can't love my child, you know, enough. I can't show them that unconditional love, when really that's all kids ever need, you know? There's the hot take.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was interesting. I was, I haven't interviewed a bunch of people who grew up Catholic, but one of the guys I interviewed was Matt Pryor, who was with the Get Up Kids. Okay. And he grew up Catholic, and I asked him, like, was that positive or negative? And he was like it was 100% negative for him. You know? I mean, and he ran from any kind of Christianity or institutional religion, you know, the rest of his life. But he still has some really good practices in meditation, mental health, all that, which I think are all spiritual paths as well. But yeah, I think when any kind of rules or dogma like hinder you from understanding, if you believe in a God, that God is love, or it hinders you from actually loving people, then I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and I think
so,
unfortunately, I mean, I think if you look at the news, if you Google any of that, I mean, organized religion has not embraced that. I mean, organized religion has really found all of these different ways to separate people, to separate families, to make people feel like they're not enough, or they're not living up to the current understood understanding of a book, right?
It can be very shame-based.
Totally.
Very, very rule-based, rules that a lot of times don't promote love. That's religion at its worst, I think. Right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah, so I am radically committed to love and grace these days, and that if you believe in God, that is what God is. God is love. Boom. Period. And then that love, the way we need to interpret everything and walk through everything is with that ethic of love. And,
I mean, I think that's spot on. I think it is tricky though, because you're trying to put like a square block in a round hole by trying to use the vessel of organized religion to communicate that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't work. It's you have history, you have thousands of years, you have doctrines, you have, it's kind of like politicians, look at the people making the rules about the way that we want to experience religion. And it's like, man, y'all are living in antiquity. You know what I'm saying? If you want to be if you want people to come to religion, if you want people to experience something good from this, you're just going. My take is they're going about it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. They're trying to hold on to something that I think is pretty clear that a lot of people are moving away from. Mm-hmm. In ways that, or maybe in the amount of people moving away from that is maybe unprecedented.
You're absolutely right. Just demographically and statistically in America right now, honestly, for the last 4 decades, there are less and less people in America attending church, attending organized religions, and that could be Christianity or any other type of organized religion as well. It could be mosques or it could be synagogues, or churches, but definitely the church, and it is increasing, and and what I find out is that a lot of people who have done a hard exit on either conservative Catholicism or evangelicalism, that they're not anti-community, like you already stated, like people still want to draw together for community, and they're not necessarily even anti-Jesus. I mean, there's some things that they love about Jesus, right? But the dogma, the rules that don't make sense, the shame-based stuff, the condemnation, the division, vitriol, all those kind of things. Yeah, I hear you. Thanks for sharing.
That's what I got.
Yeah. So, God made this cool plant, or somebody did,
okay.
or it evolved, right, some way or another, and we get these cool beans off of them. And
I wasn't sure where this was going. I was like, I'm down. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to talk about coffee at all.
We could talk medical marijuana or whatever. But anyway, all these cool plants, right?
Totally.
But, yeah. We could go there too, but let's
I'm
stick
down.
with, we'll do a coffee first. All right. How's that?
Sure.
Yeah. So you got into coffee when you're in college?
Yeah. Oak Street Coffee Shop was at 63rd and Oak, and
I'm sitting here with a corporate coffee thing. I'm like,
terrifying.
sorry, I need to apologize right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. Man, why didn't you slap me, man?
But so Oak Street Coffee Shop was, that was like kind of the neighborhood we grew up in, and it was almost like pre-cell phone, and so we would meet at this coffee shop, rain or shine, every Saturday and Sunday morning, and that would kind of be our jumping off point. Our friends worked there, so we'd hang out and then kind of figure out the plan. Are we going to go play ultimate frisbee? Are we going to go to the park? Are we going to go to Popeyes? Are we going to go to the landing? What are we going to go do with the day? And so that's really ingrained in me, is like, a coffee shop being that community hub, that center for people to gather. And I think that that's like the most important part of what a coffee shop is.
Very cool. Yeah, the community that you can build around it is definitely fun. I mean, it's similar to like a bar, like a local bar, Yeah, good stuff. So, before you started Blip, okay, what were some of your favorite coffee shops around Kansas City?
Oh man, I don't think any of them are still around.
Oh, really?
But we had this was kind of the phase of like the 90s mom and pop coffee shop, comfy chairs, big menus, weird food menus, everybody's got like bagel sandwiches and stuff, like, so there was Oak Street Coffee Shop, there was, Muddy's, there was the Winged Cup over on Gregory, One More Cup in Waldo. There were a bunch of good ones. I actually just picked up the sign from the Coffee Break. It was over on Troost. That building they must have been shut down for like 15 years. But they had a cool little building over there. But that's when coffee was more focused on community, really, really buying into being a small business. And you just don't see shops like that around too much more. It's very corporate, it's big picture. You're seeing acquisitions and purchases and sales, and everybody's chasing the volume and the cool neighborhoods, and so when we got started, the intention was let's have room to grow and figure this out and build a community, and what may come, we don't know. But we weren't going to approach it as a let's go open in the crossroads to sell the most coffee.
Yeah. So did you start? I'm going to put my
get that out of frame for sure.
Now I just repented, everybody. All right, so changed my ways.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's my closest little shop here, but I had a friend up here that started Head Rush.
Sure.
Went to high school with Eric Schneider, who was the owner there, and then they actually they had some family stuff come up, so they had to shut down.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then,
but I think they're back.
They
open.
Just reopened the one in Briarcliff.
Okay.
But I used to run down to Broadway Cafe quite a bit.
Yeah. Throw Broadway in there for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
Broadway as a roaster, I think, kind of fits into a different category than the shops I listed before. But everybody bought Broadway's beans at those shops.
Yeah.
So.
And they were, I was on they were a sponsor of one of the cycling teams I used to race for. So
excellent.
Back in 10 years ago, if you'd have gone in, or 20 years ago, even if you'd gone in there, they would have had one of my team cycling jerseys hanging on the wall in there. So
yeah, Broadway's excellent. They're definitely one of kind of those. They still have some comfy chairs. They've got the cool checkerboard floor. They still got it going on.
Definitely got some good character there. How deeply have you do you buy your coffee beans? Where do you get your coffee beans? Are you hiring you guys roast your own beans?
Yeah, so we import green coffee, and then we have our roaster on site at our shop in the West Bottoms. Over the years, we've worked with a lot of different coffees, a lot of different importers. A couple that stand out. There's a company called Cafe Oots, which means good coffee, run by Candace Castor. She brings coffee from Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. If you just Google Lake Atitlan, it's like the most beautiful scenery you could imagine. So these are shade-grown coffees grown around 2,000 meters on the slopes of this volcano that now houses Lake Atitlan inside the volcano. Totally pristine, totally crazy. I'd love to go visit. But Candace has been based in Kansas City for many years and has sold coffee to lots of folks.
Yeah.
And then another company we've been working with is Doña Fina. They're here in Kansas City on the importing and roasting side. And Erica's dad is actually the grower, the processor, the packer, the shipper, and they ship all this coffee from their farm.
Where's their farm?
I'd have to double check on exactly where it's from.
Erica is your...
She actually works with us at Blip, and she roasts all of her coffee on our roaster.
Okay.
For under the Doña Fina label. So
cool.
They've got a really cool setup where they're again, it's we won't get super specialty, but there's a big conversation on the use of the phrase direct trade, and if people can actually use that term, about coffee they purchase and import. I think that this term might be allowed in this capacity because they do own their farm. They're doing all the work. They're importing it. They're roasting it.
Yeah.
They're selling it to the end consumer. So
very cool.
Yeah. So we import coffee, but we import coffees from all over. We have coffees, at the moment from South America, which would be like Brazil, Guatemala, Mexico. We've got coffee from Ethiopia, Sumatra. We get coffees from all over for sure.
Yeah.
So we roast in the West Bottoms. We do a fair amount of wholesale. So we sell to coffee shops, offices, anybody who needs kind of like a bulk amount of coffee. Excuse me. And then we have our retail side open 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Wow.
Excuse me. So you can purchase 12-ounce boxes of coffee, anytime.
Okay. Cool. I go to Ethiopia quite often.
Excellent.
And, the first time I went there was probably in 2002, something like that. And I was just there last October. I'll probably be going back in October, but I always bring back a bunch of coffee from there. But the first time I went there, and I'm connecting with local people. So I did one of their Ethiopian coffee ceremonies and ended up falling in love with this. So they have this ancient tradition where they literally have like this really incredibly good charcoal that they buy that they actually have a little charcoal grill like in their living room, and it doesn't smoke the place out, but it burns really hot. They roast their beans right there. Like I've had them where they mash their beans.
Sure.
And then they do, it's kind of almost like espresso shots. Then they pop popcorn out of that same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
They just sit around and drink shots of coffee and popcorn and have great conversation. Just
I'm into it.
Community building,
Absolutely.
So that's one of my favorite pastimes is hanging out with doing Ethiopian coffee ceremonies. I need to get it going here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it'd be fun. So you have Ethiopian coffee as well.
Yep.
All right. How do you get? Is there a dealer over there that you work with?
So, I try not to make these processes like too fantastical. I think that they're usually portrayed that way, like, oh, I've discovered this amazing coffee and I've brought it and we're roasting it and we made a video, and like I think that there's like something to that, but the realities around purchasing coffee is that it's this is a massive commodity. This is a big traded commodity. You could look up the C price of coffee today, probably changed from yesterday. And there's like tons of regulation. You've got tariffs, import, export laws, depending on the country it's coming from. If there's a lot of turmoil going on, it might be hard to get stuff out of that country without we've worked with farmers who've had to send it to a different country to get shipped out. You've worked with folks who've had to pay a bribe to somebody at the port, to make sure their stuff is going to leave on time. So all that to say, you really do have to work within the system to get coffee most of the time. So, this is coming over shipped in, 40-foot shipping containers. The bags are approximately 150 pounds. There's quite a bit that goes into it. You might have to carry insurance on, that on the beans coming over. You want to make sure that they're not being shipped with something that could spoil, that could alter the beans. So it's fun to think about, we could go on a trip and find some good coffee in a mountain somewhere and we'll harvest it and put it in our backpack and bring it back and share our journey and, experience and share that with everyone. And I think that that's like still the general idea, is that you want to find really delicious coffees that have a cool story. You want to work with good people, but you still have to work within the confines of, the importing and exporting world. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. And then I know too, like some people make a big deal out of organic or fair trade or all these.
And those are all good certifications. There's a lot of different certifications. You can get there's the Rainforest Alliance. There's, you mentioned fair trade, organic. There's a lot of different benefits that different farms can offer. But you have to be careful not to paint the entire, all green coffee exporting or importing with that same brush of like, oh, if it's not fair trade, it's not good. Or if it's not organic, it's not good. Or, it might very well be that you could be buying a farm with better practices than the requirements for, something being labeled fair trade organic. But the reality is that those all cost money. So if you're working with smaller farms, they might not be able to afford that certification. They might not meet the water runoff requirements needed, but maybe they land on everything else. So I think to the general consumer, they're all good things to have. Those are things to keep an eye on. But you just want to be careful and not try and paint, every coffee is like, oh, if it's not in the Rainforest Alliance, they're not good. That's not necessarily what it means.
Okay. You guys have done a good job with your branding, it seems like, and then you've also been able to draw the motorcycle crowd. Talk about your branding and then the motor, and how you've kind of catered to the cycling community.
Yeah, so I think it all kind of boils down to the same idea we've already brought up, which is how do we build community? For me, that passion was always coffee. how do we make this community center, and how do we make it something interesting? Like, how can we bring different demographics into the fold? We didn't open, and I very well tried to, don't get me wrong, but, we didn't open a pour over bar. We didn't go after the specialty demographic specifically. We didn't open the most expensive or the fanciest coffee shop, because our intention was not to do that. Our intention was to build a community space, build a community, use coffee as that catalyst to bring folks together. And when we look at what that community could look like, it doesn't have to be the same as every coffee shop. I think Kansas City's an interesting example. I think if you are talking to any lay person and you're like, hey, can you draw me what a coffee customer looks like? I think take a picture of me, it's gonna be like the white dude with the glasses and the hat and the beard, and it's like, that's what, because that's usually who that coffee consumer is. So post Charleston, I bought my first bike, brought it to Kansas City, started Blip, and the idea was, similar to coffee, the motorcycle world, was really, really calling for more. It had its kind of like niche markets of who's allowed to ride a motorcycle and what they're allowed to go do, and it's go to a bar or go to a dealership. When in reality, that just doesn't encompass the motorcycle community. It's every walk of life. It's every type of motorcycle. It's electric scooters to, you pick it. So in the framing of a community space around coffee, it was so easy to bring those worlds together. And so, we host a lot of different motorcycle events. We do releases with, we've had Triumph and Royal Enfield, and, we've done stuff with Harley. And I think that, it doesn't have to be a replacement for everywhere else folks might go on their motorcycle, but it definitely allows folks to think outside the box of like, what a gathering place might look like. What does a coffee drinking community look like? Does it have to fit into that standard norm of kind of what the perception of a coffee consumer is? And I think once you kind of go down that path, you realize how big coffee is. You realize how big two wheels are. Like how so many people. Think about coffee consumption. Like everybody drinks coffee. Like 100%, right? Like it might be instant coffee. It might be Starbucks. It might be Folgers. But like everybody drinks coffee. Similarly, like everybody rides like a motorcycle. It might be a bicycle, it might be a scooter, but like at some point, like everybody has come into that, and I think once you realize that, the customer bases for these are so diverse, I think that that really changed the way that we approach the business. It's like you want to be approachable, you want to be, and that means the design of the space, that means your price point, that means what your menu looks like, what language you use. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. So I've been a part of the bicycling community now for over 20 years. And so it's funny because when I'm out on long rides, particularly, there's times when I'll be like with a team, we're out doing a training, maybe 100-mile training thing. And then there's often times when we'll cyclists will pass us, or even groups of cyclists that are out on like a big ride, stuff like that. And it seems like there's always cyclists who feel like we're both on two wheels.
Totally.
And so there's a little bit of camaraderie. And
yeah, I mean, I think we've seen in Kansas City a huge overlap. You brought it up earlier with the mountain biking. We have a ton of folks who might, one day ride their motorcycle down for a coffee, and the next day they got their truck loaded up and they're, going to Bentonville, or they're, going to go hit the trails at Swope. So we see a lot of that overlap. Yeah,
and a lot of the trail, earth riders that maintain trails around Kansas City. We've got hundreds of miles of single track trails. Those are great guys. They have, each trail system has its own trail crew that works on it. So that's a fun crowd too.
Totally.
Yeah. So what are some of the other, coffee and motorcycles? What percentage of people do you think are motorcycle riders that are your customer base?
Oh man, I wouldn't want to guess on the percent. Yeah. I mean, it's quite a bit. But
is it 50%? Do you think? Is it half your customers are motorcycle riders?
Maybe. We really wanted to position ourselves so that it's not a put off. It's not scary. It's not daunting. You can come in, buy a bag of beans, buy a coffee. You do not have to ride a motorcycle to come to this business. And I think we've done a pretty successful job at that. Yeah. Being in the West Bottoms is, pretty tricky. There's nobody down there. It's grown quite a bit over the last couple of years, and will continue to grow, for years to come. We've been down there for 8 years, and, pretty much a wide open canvas of what you could build. There's no expectation because there's nobody there. There's no built-in clientele. You don't have to appease anybody. There's no group that you have to cater to get your business off the ground. We were really able to approach it, in such like an organic way where we were able to build it to where it is now. And I don't think we would have been able to do that in any other neighborhood besides the West Bottoms.
Yeah. And you got, let's talk about how people can connect with you. Obviously, they can go down to your shop. Yep. What's your website?
So everything is Blip Roasters, all one word. So Instagram, Facebook, website,
bliproasters.com,
Twitter, LinkedIn. Yep, bliproasters.com.
Okay.
We're open 7 days a week. Every day 7 to 7. We're open till 10 o'clock right now on Wednesdays. We host the Poetic Underground. It's like one of Kansas City's larger, poetry groups. They host open mics. They also host writing workshops almost every Wednesday, not quite every Wednesday.
Very cool. Awesome. You got a conference room as well that people can.
Yeah. So we reopened in our new space in September of 2020. And it's a lot bigger than any of our other shops. And so we have like our officing. We actually have like a small commercial kitchen. So we sublet that out most of the time, but we do prepare. We have like breakfast burritos every day. We also have like some basic lunch sandwiches. We have a conference room that we rent out. We just finished our new patio on the south side of the building. It's a little hot right now, but it's very nice. Lots of space for merch, our roasting. So we have a lot going on.
Cool. All right. Well, folks, I want to encourage you to get down to Blip Coffee in the West Bottoms and say hello to Ian Davis.
Let's go.
And people can order. They can get their coffee beans to use at home there as well, and all of that stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So you got merch, coffee beans, conference rooms.
You basically don't have to leave. You can just stay there all day.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, Ian, for coming on Spirituality Adventures. We appreciate what you're doing in the city and the community that you're building. And we thank everybody for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures, and we will see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.